Michael Jones adjusted his tie as he stepped into the cool air of Crestwood Bank in Denver, Colorado. The morning had been brisk, but productive, and this was supposed to be his final errand before heading back to his office. His leather briefcase swung by his side as he approached the sleek counter where a young woman, Lisa, stood behind the glass, her hair neatly pinned back. "Good morning," Michael greeted, his voice calm and friendly. He slid a crisp check and a bundle of bills through the slot. "I'd like to deposit this." Lisa glanced at the check, then at Michael, her eyes lingering for a moment too long, narrowing slightly. "This line is for business clients only," she said, gesturing toward another line filled with customers. "I am in the right place," Michael replied, his smile unwavering. "This is a business account deposit." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I'll need to see some identification," she said curtly. Michael hesitated, not because he minded, but because of the tone, sharp, almost accusatory. He pulled his wallet from his pocket and passed her his driver's license. Lisa studied it, her expression shifting to one of suspicion. "This your ID?" she asked, flipping it over as if searching for signs of forgery. Michael raised an eyebrow. "Yes, why?" Without answering, Lisa set the license aside and stared at the check. "And where exactly did you get this?" she asked, holding it up like it was a piece of evidence in a crime scene. Michael's calm exterior began to crack. "I wrote it," he said firmly. "It's for my company, Apex Capital." Lisa scoffed. "And what exactly is your role there?" "I'm the CEO," Michael said simply, though his patience was wearing thin. Lisa's smirk was slight, but unmistakable. She leaned over and pressed a button. "Security, I might need some assistance," she said into the intercom, as though speaking about a disturbance rather than a customer. "Is there a problem?" Michael asked, his voice firm now, though he kept it steady. Lisa folded her arms. "I'm just doing my job. This check doesn't look right, and your story doesn't add up. Do you have another form of ID? A passport, maybe?" Michael stared at her incredulous. "Who carries a passport to the bank?" Her lips curved into a thin smile. "I do, when I travel," she said smugly. Lisa's finger hovered over the intercom button, and her smirk only deepened. A tall security guard emerged from a side door moments later, his posture stiff and eyes scanning the room. The air felt heavier now, and Michael could feel the weight of several curious glances from other customers. "Is there an issue, Lisa?" the guard asked, his voice calm but firm. "Yes," she replied, gesturing toward Michael. "I suspect fraud. This gentleman handed me a check and ID that don't seem to match. His story doesn't add up." Michael turned toward the guard, maintaining his composure. "There's no fraud. I'm here to deposit a check for my company account, and everything I provided is legitimate." The guard looked at Lisa, then at Michael, and back again, his stance shifted slightly, as if unsure how to proceed. "Do you want me to call the police?" he asked. Lisa waved her hand dismissively. "Not yet. Let's confirm the check first. It's from a company called Apex Capital. Apparently, he's the CEO." Michael inhaled deeply, the sharp edge of her words striking a nerve. "You could save us all some time by calling the number on the check," he said, keeping his voice measured. "They'll confirm everything." Lisa ignored him, pulling a second monitor closer to type in the check details. As her fingers moved across the keyboard, she glanced at Michael again. "Do you even have another form of ID? A business card? Anything that proves who you are?" Michael opened his briefcase and handed her a neatly printed business card, embossed with the Apex Capital logo and his name. She barely glanced at it before setting it aside, like it held no value. "You know, we have policies to prevent people from scamming us," Lisa said, her tone sharp. "You'd be surprised how often we catch people trying to pass off fake checks. You should have thought this through better." Michael's jaw tightened, but he held his ground. "Is this how you treat all your customers, or just the ones who look like me?" he asked, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Lisa paused, her expression briefly faltering before hardening again. I'm just doing my job, she said defensively. You're the one who's acting suspicious. The security guard, still standing nearby, cleared his throat. Why don't we let her verify the check and sort this out, he suggested, his tone neutral. Michael nodded, taking a step back. Fine, go ahead. Verify it. Lisa's fingers danced over the keyboard again, and she picked up the phone to make the call. As the line rang, Michael crossed his arms and watched her, his calm exterior barely concealing the frustration building beneath the surface. Lisa held the phone to her ear, her tone clipped and professional as she spoke. Yes, this is Lisa from Crestwood Bank. I'm calling to verify a check for $20,000 issued by Apex Capital. Can I speak to someone in charge? Michael stood silently, his face unreadable, while the security guard shifted uncomfortably. The room seemed to quiet as customers nearby pretended not to listen, but leaned in ever so slightly. A pause stretched in the air as Lisa's expression flickered. Yes, I'll hold, she said curtly, tapping her nails on the desk as if the act of waiting were an affront. The line connected again, and Lisa's eyes widened slightly. Oh, Mr. Jones? Yes, I have someone here trying to cash a check in your name, and I need to confirm its authenticity. Michael arched a brow, tilting his head as he waited for the inevitable. Lisa's expression shifted rapidly, her smugness evaporating into confusion, then shock. Her cheeks flushed as she stammered, yes, of course, I didn't realize. Oh, thank you. She placed the phone down with a trembling hand, her gaze darting toward Michael, but unable to meet his eyes. It's all verified, she mumbled, her voice barely above a whisper. The bank manager, a composed man named Greg, walked out of his office just then, likely summoned by the commotion. He glanced between Lisa, the security guard, and Michael. What's going on here? He asked, his tone firm but calm. Lisa straightened, trying to salvage her authority. I was just verifying a suspicious transaction, she said quickly, but it's all sorted now. Michael took a step forward, his voice calm yet firm. What she means is that she falsely accused me of fraud, questioned my identity without cause, and treated me like a criminal for no other reason than her assumptions. Greg's brow furrowed as he turned to Lisa. Is this true? Lisa stammered, I was just following protocol. It's not my fault he seemed. Greg held up a hand to cut her off. I'll handle this. Mr. Jones, I apologize for any inconvenience. Is there anything I can do to make this right? Michael's gaze didn't waver. I think you should take a closer look at how your employees treat people, because this isn't just inconvenient, it's unacceptable. Greg turned back to Lisa, his expression now stern. Lisa, you didn't just make a mistake. You treated one of our most important clients with disrespect and prejudice. Client? Lisa repeated, her voice faltering. Greg nodded, motioning toward Michael. This is Michael Jones, the CEO of Apex Capital. They're one of our largest business partners, and this bank handles millions of their transactions annually. You've just accused the owner of a fraudulent check from his own company. The color drained from Lisa's face. I didn't know, she stammered. I was just doing my job. No, Michael interrupted, his voice calm but commanding. You weren't doing your job. You were making assumptions based on what you saw, not what was in front of you. I gave you every piece of proof you asked for, and it still wasn't enough, because you'd already decided I didn't belong here. Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but found no words. Greg exhaled sharply, turning to Michael. Mr. Jones, on behalf of Crestwood Bank, I deeply apologize. This behavior doesn't reflect our values or the way we treat our customers. Michael studied him for a moment before nodding. Your apology is noted, but it's your actions that matter. What will you do to ensure this doesn't happen again? Greg's gaze shifted back to Lisa. Effective immediately, Lisa, you're terminated. Her eyes widened, panic setting in. Wait, fired? You can't do that. I can, and I just did, Greg said firmly. Clear out your desk by the end of the day. Lisa's lips quivered as she looked at Michael, hoping for some kind of reprieve, but Michael's expression remained steady, offering no sympathy. The security guard stepped forward. "I'll make sure she collects her things without issue," he said, his voice low as Lisa shuffled away. Michael turned back to Greg. "I appreciate your swift action," he said, his tone measured, "but you still have a larger issue to address. This isn't about one employee. It's about the culture that allows this to happen." Greg nodded solemnly. "You're right. We'll review our training programs and policies immediately. You have my word." As Lisa disappeared from sight, Greg motioned toward the private office. "Mr. Jones, please let me personally assist you with your deposit." Michael glanced around the bank, catching the uneasy stares from the other customers. He knew their curiosity wasn't from malice, but the moment still hung heavy with the weight of what had transpired. He nodded at Greg and followed him, briefcase in hand. Inside the office, Greg processed the transaction with precision, offering occasional reassurances that this would never happen again. When the deposit was complete, Greg leaned forward slightly, his tone earnest. "Mr. Jones, I can't apologize enough for what happened today. It was unacceptable." Michael regarded him calmly. "Apologies are important, Greg, but they're not the solution. What matters is making sure this doesn't happen to someone else, someone who might not have the resources or the position to defend themselves." Greg nodded solemnly. "We'll take action. That's a promise." Michael stood, slipping his receipt into his briefcase. He paused at the door, turning back. "And one more thing, educate your team. A lesson on respect and equality can go further than firing someone." Greg straightened, his expression resolute. "Understood." As Michael stepped back into the main lobby, he paused. He wasn't one to make speeches, but the room felt different now, quieter, more reflective. The customers who had witnessed the incident were still watching, their curiosity now tinged with something else, respect, perhaps, or shame. "Don't judge someone by how they look," Michael said, his voice steady, but loud enough to carry. "You might be looking at the very person who could change your life." He gave a small, polite nod to the onlookers and walked out of the bank. The sunlight greeting him like an old friend. Outside, he stood for a moment, taking in the fresh air. His frustration from earlier had shifted into something more productive, a determination to keep pushing boundaries, not just for himself, but for everyone who'd ever been doubted or overlooked. Inside, Greg called a staff meeting. Lisa's empty chair at the front desk would remain a silent reminder of the change that needed to happen, not just at Crestwood Bank, but in every corner of society where assumptions still outweighed understanding.